There is extensive coverage of the bomb attacks on the 6 o'clock news coming up on BBC One, continuing coverage on BBC News 24 throughout the evening. But for us, for now, it's goodbye.
So now on BBC One, an extended 6 o'clock news with George Alagiah and Sophie Raworth.
So just come in towards Edgware Road Station, and then all of a sudden there's this explosion. A big white appeared, and then it was just smoke everywhere in the tunnel. We was trying to close the doors because it was just smoke, you couldn't breathe.
London under attack. 33 confirmed dead as terrorists target London's transport network.
4 explosions in total, 3 on the capital's underground trains. The whole system is brought to a halt.
A passenger catches the moment when people helped each other out of the tube tunnels and to safety.
London's major hospitals are on full alert. Hundreds of injured are being treated, many in critical condition.
Tony Blair breaks away from the G8 summit and heads to Downing Street. The world's leaders say they stand with Britain.
The terrorists will not succeed. Today's bombings will not weaken in any way our resolve to uphold the most deeply held principles of our societies and to defeat those who would impose their fanaticism and extremism on all of us.
Tonight at 6, as the scale of the attacks becomes clear, we have an hour-long special programme.
We'll have the latest on the worst terrorist attack to hit London.
Emergency workers are still at King's Cross Station tonight, where 21 people died.
We'll talk to our correspondents across the capital. Duncan Kennedy is at the Royal London Hospital, where the first wounded were taken.
Paul Wood is at Scotland Yard, where the police are coordinating the emergency response.
And David Shukman is high above the city. He'll have the latest on the situation right across the capital. It's 6 o'clock. Good evening.
Londoners had been warned about an attack. They hoped it would never happen. But today it did. It was still rush hour in London when the attacks began. Police say there were 4 bomb explosions, 3 on the underground trains and 1 on a bus. At least 33 people have been confirmed dead so far and around 300 injured, 45 of them seriously. There was no warning given, though there's growing speculation that Al-Qaeda was responsible. The Queen has offered her sympathy to all those affected. Tony Blair called the attacks barbaric and promised to track down the people responsible.
The blasts all happened within the space of an hour. At 8:51 this morning, emergency services were called to London's Liverpool Street station following an explosion initially thought to have been caused by a power surge. That turned out to be a bomb on a train between Liverpool Street and Aldgate stations. At least 7 people were killed and scores more were injured. At 8:56, as police confirmed they were dealing with a major incident, a second bomb went off on a tube between King's Cross and Russell Square stations. 21 people died in this blast. The entire tube network was brought to a halt. At 9:17, a third explosion involving 3 tube trains left at least 5 people dead at Edgware Road Station. Police confirmed explosives were found there. Finally, at 9:47, a 4th bomb ripped apart a bus in Woburn Place, causing terrible injuries and, as yet, an unconfirmed number of deaths. Our first report on today's terrorist attacks is from our Home Affairs correspondent, Margaret Gilmore.
They said it was only a matter of time. Today, the terrorist attacks, for so long feared, struck at the heart of London and at the heart of the city's transport system. At 8:51 a.m, the first bomb exploded on a train 100 yards inside a tunnel deep below the surface near Aldgate East Station. Within minutes, it became clear this was a major incident. Hundreds were injured, 7 people died.
All of a sudden there was this explosion. A big white appeared, and then it was just smoke everywhere in the tunnel. We was trying to close the doors because it was just smoke, you couldn't breathe.
There was confusion as hundreds of wounded passengers emerged from 3 different stations. Some of the pictures are too distressing to show. This was still rush hour, the trains packed with commuters and tourists.
People started to scream because there was a burning smell, and everyone to cut a long story short, thought they were going to die. People started saying prayers, praying to God, panicking, breaking the carriage windows with their bare hands, anything to get oxygen into the carriage, because more people tried, the more distressed they became. Women passing out, people started getting very agitated. There was no communication from any drivers. Everyone was in pitch black. Then the emergency lights came on, and more smoke started coming into the carriage, and we were there for something like 20 to 30 minutes, during which the smoke intensified, the screaming intensified, the hysteria, and that's what it was, became almost to a state of pandemonium.
Within minutes of the first, a second device went off near King's Cross, killing 21 people. A third device exploded at 9:17 near Edgware Road. The force of the blast blew a hole in the wall through to a platform. 5 people were killed in this explosion. This woman had never travelled on the underground before.
We listened to a bang, dark, a ball of fire came in, and then just everyone started shouting, everything started getting like dusty, and we were trapped. We couldn't break the windows of the carriage. Everyone was like literally couldn't breathe, and everyone went down. We kind of calmed down, everybody calmed down, but then you started listening to the people shouting on the carriage that blew up, and there was this awful screaming of people like just help, 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 and it's just indescribable.
The roof had just been blown upwards and outwards. Doors were on the track, and there was just people screaming and wailing, people are dying in here, help us, and it was awful.
And this is what it was like just after the explosions, filmed by mobile phone. Early suggestions the blasts were the result of an electric power surge on the underground were cruelly dismissed with a fourth explosion. It was on a double-decker bus in Woburn Place near Russell Square in central London. It was 9:47. All the bombs were conventional. Here, shrapnel hit nearby buildings. We know people died here too. We don't yet know how many. And again, many more were injured. It was now crystal clear this was the work of terrorists.
Within minutes of the first operation, a well-rehearsed emergency plan swung into operation. The job made more difficult by the fact so many Scotland Yard officers are up in Scotland helping with security at the G8 meeting. Here, reinforcements have been brought in, police officers and medical staff from counties surrounding London.
Police say there were no warnings, no credible claims of responsibility.
This clearly was a callous attack on purely innocent members of the public, deliberately designed to kill and injure innocent members of the public.
The police and MI5 are investigating the possibility the 4 devices were planted by 4 suicide bombers.
At the moment, we don't know whether or not this was suicide bombers or whether this was simply packages left on the bus and in the underground stations. It's too early to say.
The entire London Underground has been closed down and buses in central London are not running. Many roads around the city are gridlocked and the mobile phone system is heavily overloaded. Friends and relatives have had trouble getting through.
We got a call early this morning and saying that my sister saying that, telling us basically what had happened and that she was hurt and that she's on the tube somewhere and that she's at Russell Square, but no one's really telling us anything at the moment, so we're just kind of waiting to see what happens. It's just the not knowing, the phones are down, it's just the not knowing. We just want to get through and know she's safe.
Security experts will now spend weeks sifting through the debris of these blasts, working out the sequence of events and trying to pin down those responsible. What has been confirmed today is that terrorist cells continue to operate to devastating effect in the UK. In parallel, there will be families this evening whose lives are forever changed by the ruthless acts of those behind these blasts who appear to have no limits to what they'll do. Margaret Gilmore, BBC News.
Well, we can get the latest now from Deputy Assistant Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, Brian Paddick. He's in central London. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining us. Can you give us an update on the casualty figures tonight?
Yes, I'm very sad to say that there have been 2 more fatalities discovered at Edgware Road, and there were, we didn't have figures before, there were 2 fatalities on the bus. The figures that we were given before from the London Ambulance Service were people that they had attended to and who they had taken to hospital. We now can confirm that there are 700 casualties in total, many of whom made their own way to hospital.
So that's 37 people in total at the moment we know have died. Do you expect that figure to rise?
We believe, in terms of people who have already tragically died, that is the number. But there are a number of people who are seriously ill in hospital. So it may be that there may be more fatalities as a consequence of that.
Quite appalling attacks today. Have you any idea what kind of devices were used yet? I mean, there were reports earlier on of suicide bombers. Do you know any more about that?
It's too early to tell. We are sifting through the debris. We are trying everything we can to bring the people who've carried out these appalling atrocities to justice. But at the moment, we're unable to say whether or not the bombers were with their bombs when they exploded.
And you had absolutely no warning of these blasts, did you? Does that tell you anything about the type of attack and who could have been behind it?
Well, I mean, this is just completely an indiscriminate attack on innocent men, women and children, mainly targeted at people travelling on public transport. Totally callous attack. There has been one unconfirmed claiming of responsibility by a group on the internet. We're looking into that, but we're keeping an open mind as to who might be responsible. Clearly, our sympathy goes to all those who have lost loved ones in these terrible incidents, and to the friends and relatives of those who've been seriously injured.
What is your advice to public tonight? Should they be staying at home? Should they be coming into work if they work in central London tomorrow?
As far as tonight is concerned, clearly we want people who work in emergency services to continue to come into London. We need them to help with the continuing rescue efforts. Anybody else, we would recommend, unless your journey is absolutely essential, not to come into central London tonight. Tomorrow, we believe, will be a different story. We should have at least most parts of the underground system working. London buses are already operating tonight in central London, but we would say, unless it's absolutely essential for you to come into London tonight, to stay at home.
And finally, what about your officers, the men and women who have been dealing with these horrific scenes today? It must have been very traumatic for them. How have they coped with it all?
It's been very traumatic for our officers and for those people from the other emergency services. They are determined to do a professional job. Clearly, we are going to give them plenty of support to make sure that they can cope with the terrifying scenes that they've seen. But I have to say, the emergency services and the people of London have responded magnificently to this terrible, terrible atrocity.
Brian Paddick, thank you very much for talking to us tonight.
Now, if you're worried about relatives, don't call 999 or any of the hospitals. Scotland Yard has issued a special telephone number for anyone concerned about friends or relatives. The number to ring is 0870 1566 344. That's 0870 1566 344. Well, our home editor, Mark Easton, is at King's Cross now. We can go over to him. Mark, I gather you were caught up in all of this morning.
That's right, George. I was passing King's Cross at about just after 9 o'clock and looked out of my car and saw the soot-blackened faces of clearly traumatised men and women, perhaps some of the first victims to reach the ground, having been trapped underground for some time. And having covered and reported on the threat from Al-Qaeda, I have to say I did fear how the day might unfold. I parked my car just a few hundred yards away, and as I closed my car, I heard a thunderous boom echo down the road, which I didn't know then, but turned out, of course, to be the bomb which ripped the roof off a double-decker bus. Having made my way to King's Cross, I found myself among a group of the walking wounded who were taken to 4 double-decker buses, which had been commandeered as treatment centres. It was extraordinary, the shock, the tears that many displayed, but the professionalism and control of the emergency services was hugely impressive. And overall, the mood throughout was one of real calm. It was as though they had managed to suck the terror out of terrorism this morning.
Mark, the whole area behind you there is sealed off. We can just see some emergency workers, I think, going into the area behind you. What's the situation now?
Well, the operation here is still continuing. What's really obvious, though, is the huge numbers of people who are trapped in London, unsure how to get home. A big operation involving the rail companies and the emergency services. Fascinating to see how they've all worked so well together, both private sector and public sector operations, to keep everyone calm, to keep the situation under control. If yesterday was about the euphoria of winning the Olympic Games, and today is about the horror of losing so many lives in central London. If indeed this was the work of Al-Qaeda and they were trying to terrorise London and Londoners, my impression from here at King's Cross is that they failed.
Mark, thank you.
So it was just before 10 o'clock this morning that the last bomb went off, this time on a packed double-decker bus near Tavistock Square in central London. 2 passengers were killed. Police confirmed that just a few moments ago. Here's Fergal Keane.
This was how terrorists made war on the people of London. A midsummer morning erupting in horror. They struck at one of the city's most reassuring everyday symbols, a London bus, the number 30 from Hackney to Marble Arch. The explosion blew the roof off. Commuters sitting upstairs caught the full impact of the devastating blast. This image of individual agony was captured just after on a mobile phone. One pedestrian saw the blast from a short distance away.
I saw this bus literally just explode. There was a huge noise there and bits of glass flying everywhere. And I couldn't get too close because the police were on the scene immediately. They cordoned off the area and were getting rid of people. But I did see a bus driver in a complete state of shock being led away by a policeman. And there were 2 ladies with bits of blood in their hair and glass, etc. So I took the 2 ladies away and just tried to find them somewhere to sit down.
A doctor who treated the injured described the scene.
I mean, I worked in casualty for 6 months, but this is like having 6 months of casualty in 3 hours. Every injury you can think of, every serious injury I've ever seen over a long period of time, you saw within a few hours.
One man was crossing the road near the bus when he was lifted off his feet by the blast.
I probably saw maybe 20 people lying on the floor, not moving, and then lots of people like myself. So.
What many who were close by remember is the extraordinary noise roaring above the city's rush hour sounds.
It was probably one of the worst noises I've ever heard in my life. Your gut drops when you hear it. It was the loudest boom ever. It literally sounded like 2 trains colliding.
Shards of metal from the bus smashed into the walls of nearby buildings, shrapnel scarring the headquarters of the British Medical Association right next to the explosion. As the day wore on, police brought in sniffer dogs to check for further devices. They were followed by forensic experts, sifting slowly through the debris. After the terror, the hunt begins for clues as to who might be responsible.
The police have moved their cordon forward several times. That underscores a central fact. There isn't just a sense of shock here, but one of continuing fear. That's certainly the feeling you get talking to people as they've been leaving the city this morning. That no matter how many warnings they've had, nothing could have prepared them for this. Fergal Keane, BBC News, Tavistock Square, central London.
Well, Luisa Baldini is at the scene of that bus explosion in Tavistock Square. Luisa, the police have just confirmed in the last few minutes that 2 people did in fact die on that bus this morning.
That's right. We had no confirmation of numbers until about 5 minutes ago when Brian Paddick spoke to you on the 6 o'clock news. He has now confirmed that 2 people did die, but we still don't know how many people were on the bus itself. Now, it is as though time has stopped here, because apart from the casualties being moved out of the area, everything else has remained much as it was at 10 to 10 this morning when the blast happened, and that's so that forensic officers can begin their investigation. You can still see the bus, the top deck blown off, the vertical handrails remaining poking into the air. In the middle of the road, you can still see cars which were abandoned by their drivers when the blast happened, the doors still flung open. You can just imagine the panic as they tried to flee the scene. And outside on the office building, which was next to that bus, the blood splattered across the wall. The scene very much as it was left just after the blast. And that office, in fact, the headquarters of the British Medical Association, whose doctors tended very quickly to the injured and the dying.
Luisa, you've been there all day. You've been talking to people who were there this morning. What have they had to say?
Well, you can just imagine the shock in such a busy place as Bloomsbury is, right in the centre of London, in the rush hour. There are lots of offices around here, and shortly after the blast, I saw dozens of office workers, walking around, looking quite dazed, many of them wearing those silver shock blankets around their shoulders because it was still quite chilly. And many of them had also been going to a hall nearby where a shelter was set up and they were given food and water. There are also lots of hotels around here. I went into one where dozens of American students were huddled around a television trying to find out what was going on. They were also queuing at the payphone, phoning home, telling their loved ones they were alive and well. A couple were crying, too frightened to venture outside today.
Luisa Baldini, thank you very much.
Many of the casualties were rushed to the capital's hospitals, suffering from burns and blast injuries. Some are in intensive care. Extra ambulances were called in from outside London to help carry the injured, as Fergus Walsh now reports.
The emergency services had planned for this and they were ready. Within minutes, the first of 100 ambulances were dispatched. The capital's main trauma hospital, the Royal London in the East End, close to Liverpool Street, took the lead. Many of the wounded had blast injuries, cuts from broken glass and burns. A large number were casualties from the Liverpool Street tube bomb. Michael Henning was in the carriage behind the one which exploded.
We travelled out into the tunnel, and not long after we set out, all I saw was yellow light and what appeared to be silver lines in front of my eyes, which turned out to be the glass. And I was being twisted and thrown to the ground.
And what was your first reaction?
I thought I wasn't going to get out of this. Whatever it was, I didn't know. I thought that was it when it went all so dark. Then I touched my hand to my face and felt the blood and felt that it wasn't all over just yet.
The air ambulance was used, for the most part not to transport patients, but to ferry teams of specialist trauma doctors above the congested streets to the bomb sites.
It's been quite phenomenal for an incident this complex to be able to deploy a total of, so I think it was 18 doctors, 4 to each incident, and provide the sort of level of care that you get in intensive care actually at the scene and in the wreckage is phenomenal. I've been amazed how the team have performed.
Several double-decker buses were commandeered and used as makeshift transport for more than 100 patients with shock and minor injuries. Most were allowed home within a few hours. Across the city, emergency crews took seriously ill patients to 4 other London hospitals. St Mary's in Paddington is close to Edgware Road. Chris Randall was on the tube when the bomb went off.
We just pulled out of Edgware Road. And next thing I know, there's a large flash of light. Felt a burning sensation on my hands, put my hands up to my face. I was on the floor by that point. As soon as I realised, there'd been an accident, got up, had a look around, saw where the exits were, The train was a complete standstill. Lights are out. A lot of smoke in the carriage. On the tube, there's I'd say about maybe 6-7 people lying on the floor. A lot of people with a lot of blood on their faces and ripped clothes.
There are scores of patients still in hospital tonight. Some have had limbs amputated. Others have multiple fractures. Many are critically ill in intensive care. Fergus Walsh, BBC News.
Well, our correspondent Duncan Kennedy's outside the Royal London Hospital in the East End of the city now. Duncan, give us the latest.
Well, George, the doctors, the nurses and indeed the victims that we've been speaking to all day simply cannot believe what has happened. The raw figures tonight from this hospital are these. One person has been confirmed dead as a result of their injuries at this hospital. More than 200 people have been brought here with their injuries. 7 of those remain in a critical condition. Alastair Wilson is the clinical director of the Accident and Emergency Department here, and he's been talking to me. Mr. Wilson, tell me exactly what sort of day this has been. Describe your day.
Well, it's been extremely busy. Obviously, nobody was expecting this to happen. We were extremely fortunate in the way that things were set up. We got a meeting of the London's Air Ambulance Governance Day, in fact, going on when things began, and it meant that we had a large number of doctors and paramedics all ready to go out by helicopter to the scenes of the incidents. And it meant too, of course, that we had some communication with them about the nature of the injuries that were going to come back. So we were, I think, well prepared. The major incident plan went into action really pretty effectively, and we then saw 208 patients really coming in pretty fast after the incidents. Clearly the injuries are fairly large, a lot of blast injuries, a lot of burns, airway burns, skin burns, a lot of cuts to skin. Those that were clearly close to the blast have got the more serious injuries with amputations and big bony injuries. And that's obviously taking our major attention just now.
Of the 7 that are in a critical condition, just how serious are they?
Well, to be critical means that you are in that group, which means may die, may not. I mean, one could say 50-50 chances. But when you've got injuries of this sort, it means big injuries to many systems. So skin, muscle, bone, and possibly internal injuries as well. You know, some with brain injuries, some with big chest injuries and so forth. So it's a matter of sorting all this out and making sure the odds are on their side.
Right, Mr. Wilson, thank you very much for your time. I know you've had a busy day. Thank you for your time. And with that, it's back to you in the studio.
Duncan, thank you.
If you're just joining us, you're watching a specially extended edition of the 6 o'clock news on the day that London came under attack. 37 people are now confirmed to have died. There are 700 people who have been injured. Well, the Queen has expressed her sympathy to the relatives of people affected by today's events, and she praised the work of the emergency services. Politicians have also added their voices to the condemnation of the attacks. Here's Nicholas Witchell.
They'd gathered to try to do good. Instead, the G8 leaders found themselves confronting the evil of indiscriminate terror. It was a moment of exceptional solidarity.
We are united in our resolve to confront and defeat this terrorism that is not an attack on one nation, but on all nations and on civilized people everywhere. We will continue our deliberations in the interests of a better world. Here at this summit, the world's leaders are striving to combat world poverty and save and improve human life. The perpetrators of today's attacks are intent on destroying human life. The terrorists will not succeed. Today's bombings will not weaken in any way our resolve to uphold the most deeply held principles of our societies and to defeat those who would impose their fanaticism and extremism on all of us. We shall prevail, and they shall not.
David Davis.
Similar sentiments were expressed in a sombre House of Commons.
Britain has a long history of dealing with terrorism.
We've joined together to fight it in the past. Today we do so again. For now, the terrorism that walks the streets of London has no face. But whatever its origin, whatever its motive, our response will be the same. The British people will not be cowed, and the terrorists will not win.
Sir Mingus Campbell. Speaker, this is a sombre moment for the House and for the country. It's inevitable in these matters that the primary responsibility will rest with the government. In the discharge of that responsibility, they have our unqualified support.
The Archbishop of Canterbury called for solidarity between the different faith communities.
As it happens, I've spent this morning with Muslim colleagues and friends here in West Yorkshire, and we were all as one in our condemnation of this evil and in our shared sense of care and compassion for those affected in whatever way. Such solidarity and common purpose is vital for all of us at this time of pain and sorrow and anger.
A short time ago, the Prime Minister, having broken off from the G8 summit, spoke in number 10 Downing Street.
When they try to intimidate us, we will not be intimidated. When they seek to change our country or our way of life by these methods, we will not be changed. When they try to divide our people or weaken our resolve, we will not be divided, and our resolve will hold firm. We will show, by our spirit and dignity, and by a quiet but true strength that there is in the British people, that our values will long outlast theirs. The purpose of terrorism is just that. It is to terrorise people, and we will not be terrorised.
It was the statement Mr. Blair has known he would one day have to make, a statement of resolve on the day terrorism returned to London. Nicholas Witchell, BBC News.
Well, our political editor, Andrew Marr, is at the G8 summit in Gleneagles. Andrew, it must be a very strange atmosphere there tonight. What impact has all this had on the proceedings at Gleneagles?
Well, I think strange is right. The G8 is the biggest concentration of raw political power you get in the world. And yet, for a lot of today, it's felt almost like a sideshow. And these immensely powerful men have been reduced almost to the position of onlookers by these appalling events in London. Tony Blair learned about what had definitely happened. He understood that it was a terrorist attack, that is, after he'd been talking to the Chinese president about global warming, came out, was very shocked, which is not surprising because this is now clearly the worst terrorist atrocity in Britain after only Lockerbie. He had to take an immediate decision about whether he would try to suspend the summit or break it off early, decided that would be the wrong thing to do, got agreement for that, but then left here, went down to London. He'll be back here again tonight for more discussions. He will try and conclude all the business of the summit. We will get those resolutions, those communiques on global warming in Africa tomorrow, and then by mid-afternoon he'll be heading back down to London.
So the agenda for G8, this won't mean that it all gets pushed to one side?
Absolutely not. Remember that this was supposed to be Africa's moment. We were told that this was a historic turning point for Africa, and there is no bigger subject than global warming, an issue where there are huge differences traditionally between the European countries and others and the United States in particular, an intensely difficult, hugely important issue. Now, everybody here is clear that they simply can't be pushed to one side, that these discussions and the communiques, which are virtually agreed already, have to be concluded, that they owe it to all the people who sent them here to do that. Tomorrow is going to be a very, very busy day, but like today, it'll be a strange one, probably the oddest and in some ways saddest G8 summit there's ever been.
Andrew, thank you very much.
Police in London have been warning about a terrorist incident for months. Ever since the attacks on New York and Washington in 2001, police have been drawing up plans to deal with a similar event here. Daniel Sandford looks at just how well prepared the police were for what happened today.
Excuse me, please! When the scale of today's outrage became clear, emergency staff from all over the South East put into action the London Emergency Plan. This morning there was evidence everywhere. of the enormous investment in new equipment that was made after the 9/11 attacks on America. This was the huge task police faced in London this morning. First, reports of a blast at Liverpool Street, Moorgate or Aldgate stations. Initially it was blamed on a power surge. In fact, it was a bomb in a tunnel 100 yards from Liverpool Street station. Shortly afterwards, a second explosion on a tube train between King's Cross and Russell Square. On the other side of London, a third bomb went off at Edgware Road in an explosion involving 3 trains. And as passengers were being evacuated from the Russell Square area, they walked into the path of another bomb on a bus travelling from Euston Station to Tavistock Square. The biggest rehearsal for such an attack was at Bank Tube Station 2 years ago, where important lessons were learned about communication problems underground. The pictures then a foretaste of what Londoners experience today. The capital has seen devastating bombs before in the IRA era, as at Canary Wharf, and the most recent major incident was the Paddington train crash, but there's never been anything like today's multiple attacks designed to cause mass casualties.
Since 9/11, the planning for actually handling mass casualties, handling widespread events, has improved. I think we've seen some of that. The reports of buses being used, for example, for ferrying people to hospitals. The way in which actually the underground has stopped quickly and swiftly, so the buses, so things can obviously be checked. That sort of response has been well polished.
As casualties were rushed to A&E, deep under Whitehall, Cobra was convened, twice. It's an emergency committee of ministers and senior officials from the Home Office and other relevant departments. Reassurance and information were a priority. The head of policing in London toured the television studios. The official advice on such occasions is go in, stay in and tune in to the radio or television.
There are just a series of very short messages at the moment that we need to give. The first is to stay where you are. All of London's transport is currently disabled or stopped, whether that's buses or trains. So the safest thing that everybody can do is to stay where they are.
Some problems are hard to avoid, like the near collapse of the mobile phone network because of the enormous number of calls. But London did not panic, and that made things much easier for the emergency services, stretched beyond their limit. Daniel Sandford, BBC News.
If you've just joined us, you're watching a specially extended 6 o'clock news. Terrorists have launched bomb attacks at targets in central London. There were 4 blasts in total, 3 on tube trains and 1 on a double-decker bus. At least 37 people are known to have died. Around 700 have been injured, 45 of them seriously.
Well, this is what happened. At 8:51 this morning, emergency services were called to London's Liverpool Street station following an explosion initially thought to have been caused by a power surge. That turned out to be a bomb on a train between Liverpool Street and Aldgate stations. At least 7 people lost their lives and scores were injured. At 8:56, as police confirmed they were dealing with a major incident, a second bomb went off on a train between King's Cross and Russell Square stations. So far, 21 people have been confirmed dead. The entire tube network came to a halt. At 9:17, a third explosion left 7 people dead at Edgware Road. Police confirmed explosive devices had been found. And at 9:47, a 4th bomb ripped apart a bus in Woburn Place, causing terrible injuries and 2 deaths.
Tony Blair called the attacks barbaric and the Queen expressed her sympathy with those affected. Scotland Yard has issued a special telephone number for anyone concerned about friends or relatives. The number to ring is 0870 1566 344. That's 0870 1566 344.
Well, a group claiming to be linked to Al-Qaeda says it carried out the attacks. Intelligence agencies are following several leads in an effort to work out who the bombers were. But as Frank Gardner reports, Islamist terrorists are the most likely culprits.
Within the walls of MI5 headquarters in London, the Joint Terrorism Analysis Centre has been working flat out today, trying to solve a burning question: who was behind today's bombings? So far, the nearest we have to a claim of responsibility is an unverified message posted on this internet website. It comes from a group calling itself the Secret Organisation of Al-Qaeda Jihad in Europe. It talks of the blessed raid in London, of revenge against the British government for what it calls its massacres in Iraq and Afghanistan. The Al-Qala website is well known to analysts, but it's hard to know just who's behind its messages.
This website has in the past carried similar statements. However, there is no way at this moment in time of verifying how genuine the claim actually is.
Al-Qaeda-linked groups have hit British interests before. This was the British consulate in Istanbul after a bomb blast in 2003. That same year, the BBC learned that the British embassy in Yemen was also targeted, but the plot was intercepted. If today's attack was the work of Al-Qaeda, it'll be their first successful attack on the British mainland.
The perpetrators are sending out a very clear and loud message to the G8 summit, to the most powerful nations on earth, that they can strike at the very heart of the capital without any difficulty or trouble, that they can launch multiple coordinated attacks. This is a wake-up call, and it shows that there must be no room for complacency because the threat is real.
The presence of British troops in Afghanistan and Iraq is known to anger Al-Qaeda. But tonight, the Prime Minister gave no indication there were any plans to withdraw them soon. Frank Gardner, BBC News.
Today's attacks came just 24 hours after the city was told it had been awarded the Olympic Games for 2012. The Mayor of London, Ken Livingstone, who's in Singapore, described what happened as a cowardly attack. From there, Andrew Harding has sent us this report.
Their faces say it all. Sir Bobby Charlton and his London teammates checking in for what should have been a triumphant flight back home. Instead, they slipped out of Singapore in the deepest gloom.
Devastated, completely and utterly devastated. And this is our town, our city, our home, and we're praying for the people that have been affected. That's all for now, thanks.
The news had sent shockwaves through the team's hotel. The new Olympic minister Tessa Jowell rushing off to contact London. A little later, the city's mayor came out, clearly anxious to get home and bitterly condemning the attack.
This was not a terrorist attack against the mighty and the powerful. It was not aimed at presidents or prime ministers. It was aimed at ordinary working-class Londoners, black and white, Muslim and Christian, Hindu and Jew, young and old. Indiscriminate attempt to slaughter, irrespective...
The same spirit that had just won London the Olympic race would, he said, defeat the bombers.
And nothing you do, however many of us you kill, will stop that flight to our cities, where freedom is strong and where people can live in harmony with one another. Whatever you do, however many you kill, you will fail.
What a contrast with the mood here this morning. A weary but elated Sebco, still savouring London's narrow victory against Paris, starting to focus on the future and the 7-year build-up to the 2012 Olympics. Those plans may not have changed, but the euphoria has vanished today. The crew's packing up in silence. The London team will be back home early tomorrow morning. They had been expecting a hero's welcome, but now thoughts of Olympic glory are the last thing on anyone's mind. Andrew Harding, BBC News, Singapore.
Well, not surprisingly, there was mayhem across London in the immediate aftermath of the explosions. The underground network and every bus service was closed down. Rory Cellan-Jones has the latest on how Londoners are coping with the aftermath of the explosions.
Oxford Street, mid-afternoon, and with no buses, the road is just about empty. But on the pavements, the rush hour has begun, with thousands of people setting off early on the long journey home. The Howard family came up from Birmingham to see a musical, which was then cancelled. Now they're trying to get back to their car in the suburbs.
You hear people saying you've got to walk 3 hours. I'm hoping that's not true.
How long have you been walking so far?
Since 12? Yeah. No, 12 o'clock.
So you've been walking 3 hours already?
Yeah.
Many of the shops closed early, with staff needing to get home, and hotels filled up with people deciding to stay the night. On a normal day, 3 million people use the London Underground to get in and out of the capital. Now, with the entire network closed and most central London buses off the road, many seem to have decided that going on foot is the only way home. Soon after 9 this morning, as reports of the explosions came in, all underground trains were halted and then stations were closed. Crowds of commuters tried to work out what was going on, but the mobile phone networks were struggling to cope with the calls. Some passengers, like this war veteran on his way to a reunion, were determined to get through.
We've been through it before, haven't we?
Nil desperandum, we'll get there.
Central London schools had to decide whether to cut short lessons. At this primary school in Victoria, they contacted parents and asked them to come and pick their children up early.
Some children, mainly our older children, are upset, predominantly because they want to get hold of their parents, and they're a little bit more aware of what's going on in the news anyway. So we're just trying to sort of get hold of their own parents.
Late this afternoon, as the long march home continued, the buses started running again, but passengers were warned they could face a long wait. Mainline services in and out of London were heavily disrupted. King's Cross is still closed, but at Paddington, commuters are managing to get a train home.
We've had our teams working on it all day. We've been operating a contingency plan this afternoon. We're hoping that we'll be restoring the service to complete normality from first thing in the morning.
Commuters face another struggle tomorrow, although a limited underground service will be running. And while central London is emptying, the motorway network on the outskirts is seizing up. The roads are going to have to take the strain until the public transport network is restored. Rory Cellan-Jones, BBC News.
Well, David Shukman is in a helicopter above central London. David, tell us what you can see there tonight.
Well, Sophie, we're on the very edge of an air exclusion zone that was imposed over this part of London, and really a great part of this capital city, soon after the bombers struck. And to give you a sense of the kind of scale of what we're seeing here, let's begin with the familiar landmark of Tower Bridge. Extraordinarily, the traffic does seem to be moving pretty easily. If we move to the right, we'll soon pick up Liverpool Street Station, seen where the underground station took that blast. And while we've been waiting to come on air, we've seen a number of trains actually starting to use the railway again. There's one on the move now, the Docklands Light Railway. Beginning to see signs of life returning to normal here in this great city that took such a hit. But on the roads, a very different picture. We've been seeing a number of major arterial roads simply gridlocked, people stuck for minutes or even hours, and there is talk of people abandoning their cars. If we zoom in close here, you'll see just one of what must be dozens of examples. That traffic has hardly moved in the hour or so that we've been in this vicinity. Now, because the traffic has been so bad on the roads, people have turned in huge numbers to one of the very few other options open to them. Down below me there, the Canary Wharf riverboat station. You can see there, as we zoom in, a large queue of people. At times, that queue has been far longer. At one stage, late this afternoon, the police were on hand to make sure everything was orderly. But clearly, people are making use of that service and getting away in fairly large numbers. Now, of course, as has been mentioned, the joy of yesterday's success, winning the Olympic bid, tempered very much today. And just to the centre of your screen now, you can see the dome. Ironic, rather sad. There's the site. It's a host venue for 2012.
David Shukman, high above the city. Thank you very much.
Just a reminder that you're watching a specially extended 6 o'clock news on today's bomb attacks in London. Well, as we've heard, the explosions caused chaos across the capital, and tonight all London theatres said they were cancelling performances. So how are things now? Let's go over to BBC's Kate Allen in central London. Kate, yeah, just how much disruption was there?
Well, for public transport passengers, absolutely loads of disruption. Obviously, it is still ongoing. At the moment in central London, there are still no tube lines running. All stations are completely closed and no trains are running through the underground network. Overground trains, all mainline trains have now reopened, which is a small piece of good news for travellers heading out of London. So GNER trains are able to leave central London from King's Cross. They're not coming into central London, they're terminating short, but they are leaving from King's Cross and St Pancras at the moment.
Okay, let's look ahead to tomorrow. After all, people might be thinking about coming into the capital city. What's the situation going to be like then?
Well, at the moment, we haven't had any updates on tomorrow morning. Obviously, hopefully some trains will be running to get people in. The best advice I can give you is tune into Breakfast tomorrow morning and into News 24, as we will be keeping you updated all through tonight and through tomorrow morning at Breakfast as well.
Kate, thank you very much. And just a reminder, for updates on the travel, you can call the Transport for London customer helpline on 0207 222 1234.
Well, shares in London and across Europe fell sharply when news of the attacks reached the stock exchange, but they rallied later in the day. Our business editor, Jeff Randall, is in the city, or is actually in our business centre. Jeff, how badly has this affected the markets today?
Well, it was a shock early on, Sophie, but as you said, the markets responded very bravely late on. There was a cool, measured response. I think traders and dealers in London did not panic. And in fact, financial markets very much reflected the mood of the people themselves. They stayed calm. Now, whether or not this has a long-term impact, I think, will depend on if there are more bombs to come. If there are, then I think all bets are off. But experience tells us that if this is it, if today was a one-off event, then markets do recover. We can remember those horrific scenes in Madrid last year, the train bombing. Of course, the stock market went down sharply after that, but it did bounce back. People in the city are very resilient folk.
And what companies have been particularly affected by the attacks today?
Well, you can imagine those that were really affected in financial terms, in stock market terms, were the travel companies, British Aerospace, British Airways, the airports company, BAA. All those stocks fell pretty sharply, as did the insurance companies. Now, British Airways was the worst affected. At one stage, it was down nearly 8%, but it too rallied, you know. It was an extraordinary performance from the stock market today. In the end, the FTSE share index of the top 100 companies finished only 70 points down, and that's not much beyond the bounds of normal trading.
Jeff Randall, thank you.
Well, let's go over now to Duncan Kennedy, who's at the Royal London Hospital in the East End of the city. Duncan, this is the hospital where most of the injured were brought to first. What's the latest there?
That's right, George. More than 200, in fact 208 people have been brought here throughout the course of the day. They've been worked off their feet. I don't think it's an over-exaggeration to say that. We've been speaking to the doctors and the nurses all day long, and they've been telling us that the injured have been brought in wave after wave after wave. Some were even brought in on double-decker buses, so many have come this way. They put into action their major emergency alert programme, one thing they've been practising many times in previous years. They're satisfied with the way it has gone. On the bad side of the news is that one person has been confirmed dead as a result of their injuries here today. 75 are still in hospital receiving treatment, and of those, 7 are in a critical condition. Now, throughout the night, the situation with this will change, the numbers will change, but obviously the prognosis, that the chance of some people pulling through the night are not as great as they were earlier on. The doctors are telling us to be realistic about that. So far as the walking wounded are concerned, they keep coming out in dribs and drabs all day long. One man we spoke to, a chap called Michael Henning, came out. He works at Lloyd's in the City of London. Took the different train that he normally takes. He was going to a meeting in the city today. He was going to get into the carriage where the blast happened today. Couldn't get in because it was so full. Decided to get in one a couple further down and lived as a result. He told me that he feels incredibly lucky, but he still feels that this whole thing will change his life entirely. He doesn't think he'll ever get over it. And I think that's a sentiment that's going to be shared by so many, many people as a result of the events of today's tragedy.
Duncan, thank you.
Well, let's go now to Paul Wood. He's at Scotland Yard. Paul, the horrific thing about today's attacks is there was absolutely no warning, was there?
That's right. There was a story earlier in the day on Israeli diplomatic sources that their embassy here had, in fact, received a warning, and that was put to the Deputy Assistant Commissioner, Brian Paddick, who spoke earlier on the programme, and he said it was quite clear the Metropolitan Police had had no warning of this. We also spoke to the security services, the domestic security service MI5, and they said they too had had no warning, although of course neither of them could say that no part of the British government had contacted the Israelis. Our two principal security services were saying they hadn't had a warning. So I suppose the question now becomes, why is it that such a huge and bloody attack on British soil didn't throw up any intelligence whatsoever? And I guess that's a question which will have to be answered in the coming days.
Police are still trying to establish what kind of devices were used, and presumably it's still far too early to talk about arrests or of people who could have been involved.
A Scotland Yard spokesman said over the past hour that no arrests had yet been made. Now, terrorism experts will tell you that the biggest chance you've got of making an arrest is in the immediate aftermath of such an attack. That's because these terrorist groups have to move personnel, they have to move the bombs and bomb-making equipment just before the attack, and there's a lot of activity, and that gives really the best chance of apprehending somebody. Now, as to who is responsible, of course it bears all the signature hallmarks of Al-Qaeda. There has been a website claim that it's Al-Qaeda. Whether or not that's authentic, we don't know, and whether or not it helps in making arrests, we'll have to see.
Forward with the latest there, thank you.
Well, let's go back to our political editor, Andrew Marr, who's at the G8 summit in Gleneagles. Andrew, today, I suppose, has been about crisis management. Do you think there are any long-term political consequences from all this?
There are certainly going to be long-term consequences. Politically, the government has been taking more and more power to itself over the last few years in trying to combat terrorism, and we've got the ID card controversy in front of Parliament at the moment, and we're going to see a lot more of that. Whether people who say ID cards would help in this kind of situation are right or completely wrong doesn't matter. It is going to be higher up the political agenda still. When it comes to the way Tony Blair conducts foreign policy, whether the war on terror is being fought cleverly or not, those are matters for another day. I think, however, it's absolutely clear that this is not going to be a government that fundamentally changes. Under Tony Blair, Britain has been an unusually open country, lots of flows of people coming in and out, a lot of immigration, and that's been controversial too. And it's also been a country which has been very dominant in world politics and very controversial. And I don't think that's going to change either. So when it comes to the big questions, Tony Blair has made his decisions about the way he wants to take this country, and I think we will see very little difference. I think for everybody living in London and the other cities of this country, life is just going to be a little bit stickier, a little bit more difficult, a little bit more unpredictable, more checks, more policemen, more security, more false alarms, more alerts, more closures. It makes life just a little bit grittier and harder. But so far as the government is concerned, I don't see any fundamental change on policy at all.
Andrew, earlier today when Tony Blair was talking, he was careful to say he didn't blame all Muslims. Clearly the government is mindful of community relations here.
Absolutely. Remember almost the first thing that Tony Blair said after 9/11, apart from expressing his condolence and horror about the attack itself, was, we do not believe that Muslims generally are responsible for this kind of thing. We heard the Archbishop of Canterbury coming forward with that message too. He is very acutely interested in and sympathetic to the Muslim community in Britain. He believes they're an absolutely essential part of this country. And I think everybody in government is wary and worried that these kind of attacks will produce a backlash, and are determined right from the word go to say this is one of the things that we are as a country now, is that we are multi-religious, multi-ethnic and mixed, and that's how we're going to stay.
All right, Andrew, thank you very much. A reminder again of tonight's main news. Terrorists have launched coordinated bomb attacks against targets in central London.
At least 37 people are known to have died. Around 700 have been injured, 45 of them seriously.
Terrorists attacked a bus and 3 tube stations during London's rush hour.
And there's been widespread condemnation. Tony Blair, who returned to London from the G8 summit at Gleneagles, called the attacks barbaric and promised to track down those responsible.
This has been a most terrible and tragic atrocity that has cost many innocent lives. Up and running as swiftly as possible. I would like again to express my profound condolences to the families of the victims and to those who are casualties of this terrorist act. I would also like to thank the emergency services that have been magnificent today in every respect. There will, of course, now be the most intense police and security service action to make sure that we bring those responsible to justice. I would also pay tribute to the stoicism and resilience of the people of London who have responded in a way typical of them. In addition, I welcome the statement that's been put out by the Muslim Council of Great Britain. We know that these people act in the name of Islam, but we also know that the vast and overwhelming majority of Muslims here and abroad are decent and law-abiding people who abhor this act of terrorism every bit as much as we do.
Tonight, Londoners are struggling home and coming to terms with Britain's worst terrorist atrocity since Lockerbie in 1988.
Well, Scotland Yard has issued a special telephone number for anyone concerned about friends or relatives. The number to ring is 0870 1566 344. That's 0870 1566 344.
Well, let's go over now to Paul Wood, who's at Scotland Yard. Paul, an investigation is no doubt underway. What kinds of things are the police going to be looking for?
Well, I should say, in fact, we were just hearing from the Prime Minister. Mr Blair, in fact, visited New Scotland Yard within the past hour. He was taken to the command centre, was briefed by senior officers and had praise for the Metropolitan Police for what he said had been their tremendous response to today's events. That, of course, is continuing that response. Both the investigation, the search for the perpetrators of this, and the continuing efforts to ensure the security of Londoners and the security of those who travel on London transport. As I speak, they are attempting to move tube trains back to their depots, where, according to London Transport, every part of those tube trains will be searched so that in the morning there can be some kind of skeleton service. They're hoping in outer parts of the network to have a service tonight, but tomorrow morning there'll be a skeleton service, except in those areas which London Transport describe as a crime scene. And of course, that will partly be the focus of the Metropolitan Police's efforts. They'll be looking at the sites where these bombs exploded and attempting to make arrests. Now, terrorism experts will tell you that the greatest chance you have of making arrests is in the immediate aftermath of attacks like these. That's when the telephone calls are made, the personnel is moved, and the intelligence services will be looking to pick up those clues.
Paul, thank you very much.
That's it from us. There's a special programme on today's bomb attacks with Jeremy Paxman. That's on BBC One at 8 o'clock tonight. And there's continuing coverage throughout the evening on BBC News 24. But from everyone here on the 6 o'clock news, on a very difficult day indeed, goodbye.
Londoners will not be divided by this cowardly attack. They will stand together in solidarity around those who have been injured, those who have been bereaved. And that is why I'm proud to be the mayor of that city.
The attack, they said, was inevitable as the capital's worst ever terrorist outrage is unleashed on London's transport network.
There was banging then from outside, and you turn round and there's people from the carriage next to us trying to get in, and they were just covered in blood.
From the crowds and the confusion of the rush hour to the deserted roads as people are told to stay away. We'll be live at King's Cross and around the capital with best advice on how to get you home. Hello, good evening. This is BBC London News. It was a day that every one of us had feared, even expected. But when terrorists struck the London rush hour, nothing could take away the shock of the atrocity, which has claimed at least 37 lives so far. Tonight, hundreds of thousands of people are struggling to get home. The transport network is still seriously disrupted. In just a few moments, we'll give you the very latest travel information to help you back tonight and to advise you how to plan for tomorrow. But first, Paul Curran has more stories of those who were caught up in the explosions and were lucky enough to walk away.
We listened to a bang, dark, a ball of fire came in, and then just everyone started shouting, everything started getting like dusty, and we were trapped. We couldn't break the windows of the carriage. Everyone was like literally couldn't breathe, and everyone went down. We kind of calmed down, everybody calmed down, but then you started listening to the people shouting on the carriage that blew up, and there was this awful screaming of people like just help, 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 and it's just indescribable.
Walked down this length of the carriage and all you saw was just the second carriage from the front was completely mangled. The roof had just been blown upwards and outwards. Doors were on the track, and there was just people screaming and wailing. People are dying in here. Help us! Help us!
There was wreckage all over the track. They were still bringing people out, and they were, as you see on telly, I guess, bomb victims. All their clothes had been blown off, and there was bodies lying inside the carriage.
We just thought we were going to die, basically, because it just went really quiet, and people were screaming. It's just really, really bad.
Did you see people hurt?
Not in my carriage, no. But then when we got transferred to King's Cross, in the tickets office, they used it as an emergency room, and there was lots of people injured, really badly injured.
We got a call early this morning, and saying that my sister saying that
telling us basically what had happened and that she was hurt and that she's on the tube somewhere and that she's at Russell Square, but no one's really telling us anything at the moment, so we're just kind of waiting to see what happens. It's just the not knowing, the phones are down, it's just the not knowing. We just want to get through and know she's safe.
So just coming towards Edgware Road Station, and then all of a sudden there was this explosion. A big white appeared, and then it was just smoke everywhere in the tunnel. We was trying to close the doors because there was just smoke, we couldn't breathe. Then we all got down low to get under the smoke because it was just like so much there. And after about 10 minutes, the smoke disappeared and was able to open everything up, but there was so much screaming and people saying help, so it was a bit frightening.
A train was passing another train in the tunnel just outside Edgware Road, and there was a huge bang, and our train, all the lights went out and there was a lot of smoke.
There was banging then from outside, and you turn around and there's people from the carriage next to us trying to get in, and they were just covered in blood. And it seemed like our train was okay, but the train next to us, it was a mess. I think there was only one carriage that seemed that bad, and people covered in blood, screaming, and I don't think anyone could get to them. So a couple of the guys in our carriage broke the window, jumped in, and I think then obviously help started coming, but it was about 30-40 minutes by the time we got off.
There was a sudden loud explosion. Everyone shook. It felt as if you'd been hit in the chest. And then what we did was, there was a lot of panic. People were screaming, jumped a little bit, and everyone was heading away from that explosion, and nobody really knows what was going on.
I looked out my window, and there were people screaming. All the front of the building had been, or the glass had been blown in. I looked out another window, which was facing the bus, and there was a lot of smoke and some bodies, and the roof had been torn off the top of the bus, and I only looked for a couple of seconds, and then everyone started screaming, and we got out as quickly as we could.
Paul Curran speaking to passengers there. Now let's get the very latest update on the travel situation with Kate Allen. Kate.
Well, if you are heading into central London, the news on the Underground is all stations and all lines remain closed and suspended. There is no network at the moment. Now, for Docklands Light Railway, firstly, they have resumed services, but with some restrictions. They're not stopping at Bank, Stratford or Canning Town. Now, the overground trains, King's Cross and St Pancras, they are now open for people travelling on GNR from the north and Scotland. Trains are terminating out at Peterborough. However, GNER trains are now running out of London at the moment anyway. West Anglia Great Northern trains, they're terminating southbound at Finsbury Park. Northbound trains are, however, running out of King's Cross. And Midland Main Line trains are also running out of St Pancras. Euston Station, Silverlink County trains, they're running 4 trains an hour out of Euston towards Tring, Northampton and Milton Keynes. Liverpool Street, one railway coming from the east, they're running a near normal service this evening into and out of Liverpool Street. Paddington, First Great Western trains, limited services coming into Paddington from the west, but they are going into Paddington. Thameslink trains at the moment out of London. There are 4 from City Thameslink out to Bedford, 2 an hour from Blackfriars to Wimbledon, and 2 per hour between London Bridge and Brighton. Southeastern trains to and from the Kent area, they're close to a normal service this evening from Cannon Street. Southeastern trains are leaving the capital at Charing Cross as well, and they're running pretty much normally to Kent from Victoria, except for the Dartford line, which is still currently suspended. Trains are also running from Blackfriars and London Bridge. Marylebone Station is open. Chiltern trains are running a fairly frequent service to Aylesbury and to Denham. And Fenchurch Street, C2C trains are operating into and out of Fenchurch Street itself, but it's not a full service running to and from Essex, so it's worth avoiding. On the buses in central London, they're slowly getting reintroduced into Zone 1 following them being suspended all day today, but do expect some lengthy delays on all buses around London. For the roads, we still have many roads closed in and around central London. You can see here the A501 is still closed in both directions near King's Cross Station. Gray's Inn Road, the one-way system is closed. Caledonian Road, that's closed as well. And over in the city, we've got East Smithfield closed in towards London, the A13 Commercial Road closed, and all approaches to Aldgate one-way system completely closed at the moment, so still worth avoiding. It's having an impact for the motorways as well. The M25 and the M4 looking very busy leaving London at the moment. For the airports, Heathrow Express, Gatwick Express and Stansted Express are running into London.
Thanks, Kate. Well, as you heard then, the bus service slowly being restored. Samantha Simmonds is at a bus stop in Oxford Street, what would normally be full of late-night shoppers, but a very different scene there tonight, Sam.
That's right, it's normally teeming with thousands of people this time on a Thursday evening, as you say, late-night shopping evening here on Oxford Street. But instead of those thousands, we've got just a few hundred who seem to be mainly walking home, as you can see. Of course, the rain doesn't help, but even in the past few hours, it has been mainly people going on foot. The buses have been running here for the last couple of hours, but it seems most people have taken that decision to walk. Well, with me now is one commuter, Johan. You've got to go back to Notting Hill. How are you planning to get home tonight?
I'm probably going to walk home. I was hoping that I'd have a little better weather an hour or so ago, but yeah, I don't feel comfortable getting on a bus right now, I don't think.
Do you think that will change after today? Do you think it's just something that you're feeling today?
Well, I would hope that they work out some game plan for securing the buses. I just don't know, so I think today I'd rather walk home. Maybe they've been checked, but I just don't know.
Johan, thank you very much. Well, most people here are determined to get home, as they will have to one way or another, but the atmosphere is very calm, as it's been throughout the day here in central London. No sign of panic whatsoever. People just want to get home now safely and as quickly as possible. Back to you.
Samantha, thanks very much. Well, we have been warned that London won't be back to normal anytime soon, understandably, in terms of the transport. Andrew Winstanley is at the media centre outside the QE2 building. Hard to put any timescale on it now, Andy.
Well, the service was taken down at about 9:25 this morning, and as of yet there is no tube service back. I know that the managing director of the tube, Tim O'Toole, is at their network control centre at the moment, trying to work out how they get the timetable back. I have been told, though, that they are starting to take trains back to the depots. Now, this is vital so they can actually work out where they're going to go from here. I'm joined now by Peter Hendy. He's from Transport for London. Peter, can you tell me, can you do anything at all tonight?
Well, it seems very unlikely that there will be much tube service, if anything, tonight. The bus service is running again. The bus service was restored to central London sometime after 3 this afternoon, and we're doing our best to get people home. There are, of course, significant road closures in operation, and unfortunately there are some other security alerts, but the bus service is running. We did advise people to walk. Clearly it's not quite so nice now, and we are attempting to take everybody home by bus.
Clearly people want to know what's going to happen tomorrow. Is there going to be a fullish timetable?
Well, our anticipation, certainly Tim O'Toole, the managing director of the Underground, is going to try to run the best service he can tomorrow. Clearly there are places on the Underground where these atrocities have occurred, where there may still be forensic examination and engineering work going on. I'm sure that he's going to try to run as much service as he can. The bus service will try to run a normal service tomorrow, with the exception of the road closures, which are unlikely to be out by then. We'd like people to avoid driving into central London. That it won't help anybody, and of course there'll be significant road closures in operation. My understanding is that the National Railway Service is running normally now, except from King's Cross, and we would hope that that's also the case tomorrow morning.
Peter, thank you very much indeed. The advice really everywhere is just check in the morning with our bulletins. Emily.
Andy, thanks very much for that. This is clearly a developing situation. The travel information is constantly being updated here on our radio station, BBC London 94.9, and on our website, bbc.co.uk/London. We will, of course, bring you any major changes before the end of the programme. Well, the Mayor has praised Londoners' resilience and sent a warning to terrorists. They will never succeed in a place like this where people value their freedom and tolerance so much. Tim Donovan is at City Hall for us now. Tim, the Mayor flying back as we speak.
Emily, yes, he has left Singapore, frustrated, deeply concerned to be halfway around the world at this time. The euphoria of yesterday's Olympic decision so cruelly, abruptly ended. He is, we're told, in communication from the plane with government officials here and with Sir Ian Blair, Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police. But before he left Singapore, he offered a powerful condemnation of the terrorists' actions, attacks which had been aimed not at our leaders, the leaders who govern us, but ordinary Londoners.
This city of London is the greatest in the world because everybody lives side by side in harmony. And Londoners will not be divided by this cowardly attack. They will stand together in solidarity around those who have been injured, those who have been bereaved. And that is why I'm proud to be the mayor of that city. Finally, I wish to speak through you directly to those who came to London today to take life. I know that you personally do not fear to give your own life in exchange for taking others. It is why you are so dangerous. But I know you do fear that you may fail in your long-term objective to destroy our free society. And I can show you why you will fail. In the days that follow, look at our airports, look at our seaports, and look at our railway stations. And even after your cowardly attack, you will see that people from the rest of Britain, people from around the world, will arrive in London to become Londoners and to fulfil their dreams and achieve their potential. They choose to come to London, as so many have come before, because they come to be free, they come to live the life they choose, they come to be able to be themselves. They flee you because you tell them how they should live. They don't want that. And nothing you do, however many of us you kill, will stop that flight to our cities, where freedom is strong and where people can live in harmony with one another. Whatever you do, however many you kill, you will fail.
The American Livingston speaking from Singapore. Tim, we'd always been told a day like this was an inevitability. Were the attacks what London's emergency team had been planning for?
Well, Emily, emergency planners, as we know, had long prepared for this with countless exercises. They say their response to it has been good, albeit there were some problems inevitably of communication, confusion at the early stages, which will be picked up on straight away at what's called a hot debrief, which is likely to take place tomorrow morning. But one senior official involved in these preparations has told me there are peculiarities about this series of attacks, not exactly the scenario that they would have predicted. The locations between tube stations, on tubes, underground, wasn't what was expected. The timing, an hour between the first and the last explosion being on a bus where it was, suggesting to him not exactly the precision timing or the precision planning that we have assumed or come to expect, the hallmark of Al-Qaeda. Of course, those are questions for the police and the security services this evening.
Absolutely. Tim Donovan, many thanks for bringing us up to date there. Now, schools across parts of London have been staying open late to allow time for parents to brave the travel chaos and pick up their children. But tomorrow, thousands of pupils have been told to stay home. Karl Mercer was at one school in Bermondsey.
A normal activity on a far from normal day. These children shouldn't be playing football here, but were evacuated from the Sir John Cass School near Aldgate just after 10 o'clock this morning.
So I had to walk from Islington all the way to pick my daughter up from school.
And do you feel everything went smoothly? It was the right thing to do, evacuate the school?
Definitely, because obviously security is first for the children and we've got to keep them in mind.
How's the day been for you?
It's been really busy and really stressful for the teachers and the children.
Hopefully everything will be back to normal, but if it isn't, then...
Across town in Bermondsey, parents were arriving late to pick up their children. This school will be shut tomorrow, with management here concerned that staff and pupils won't be able to make their way in.
I assume that as the transport is all down, it's not going to be fixed by tomorrow, and it would be much better to make a decision now that would affect everybody, and at least everybody would know where everybody was and be at home safe.
Philip Jones only told his older pupils about the full horror of today's events. Tonight and tomorrow it will be the turn of parents to explain.
Obviously with the events of today it's absolutely tragic and shocking, and I think a lot of us are taking it on board what's happened, but you know, tomorrow morning waking up and realising all the sadness that's gone on today, I think the best thing is for the children to be with their parents.
Posters like this have been going up across London tonight. Many parents told tomorrow won't be a school day. Tonight, dozens of schools across central London stayed open late to allow parents extra time to come and pick up their children. But tomorrow, all the schools in Westminster will be shut. Something like 12,000 children will have to stay at home. And it's a picture that's repeated across the inner London boroughs. All of Camden's schools will also be shut, and in a whole host of inner London councils, many primaries and secondaries will be closing their doors. All of these councils saying some schools will be shut. The advice from London's boroughs to parents is to check with their local school about tomorrow. Karl Mercer, BBC London News.
Now, London hospitals have been put under intense pressure to cope with this aftermath of the bombs and are working to full capacity, as you can imagine. Tom Edwards has been at the Royal London and is there for us now. Tom, how have they coped so far?
Well, there's a real sense of disbelief and shock here. We have spoken to a number of staff on their way out, and they do say that they've coped pretty well. They've treated 208 patients here throughout the day. This is the home of the air ambulance. We've seen it coming in and out of here throughout the morning, and it's just left a few moments ago. We've also seen walking wounded being brought here by double-decker bus, and we've also seen volunteer nurses and doctors coming down here to the hospital. However, this hospital has been shut to the general public since about 10 o'clock this morning.
What are they asking of us, Tom, in terms of lessening the burden on them?
Well, what they're saying is they do have enough staff here, they do have enough blood, but the Department of Health is saying do not call 999, do not call an ambulance unless it's absolutely necessary. They're also saying do not visit A&E unless it is an emergency.
Tom Edwards, many thanks for that. Just to remind you, the police have set up an emergency hotline. That's for anyone worried about friends or relatives they think have been involved in those explosions. The number to call is 0870 1566 344. 0870 1566 344. That's the number to call if you're worried about friends or relatives involved in those atrocities. It was the event that the emergency services had spent years planning for, as Tim Donovan was explaining. So when it came, as predicted, how prepared were they? Guy Smith looks back at the way the days unfolded.
Shocked by the harrowing scenes, but not unexpected. London's emergency services had been planning and rehearsing for something like this.
Seek alternative travel arrangements.
When the first call came in just after 10 to 9 this morning, it was a confusing picture. But within less than an hour, police, ambulance and fire brigade crews were dealing with a major incident, later to be confirmed as 4 separate terrorist attacks. Paramedics were on the scene, treating at least 45 patients for serious or critical injuries, from burns to amputations. More than 300 other so-called walking wounded suffered from cuts, bruises and smoke inhalation.
We've had 250 ambulance staff on the streets of London today. A traumatic day for all concerned, but overall we've coped pretty well.
Late this morning at University College Hospital, a young woman tries to visit her mother, but she's turned away. Staff here are stretched to the limit. The new hospital on Euston Road only having opened 3 weeks ago.
And I thought everything would be okay, so I came back to try and get back in to see my mum, and they won't let me back in.
While an air ambulance leaves to recover more patients, one paramedic who was on the scene at Aldgate recounts what he saw.
It's quite overwhelming. It shocks anybody who works in this sort of area, but it's amazing. It's just quiet efficiency. There isn't that much noise. People are cracking on with the jobs that they have to do, be it the firemen, the police or the ambulancemen.
This afternoon, outside Buckingham Palace, police take no risks. A woman who allegedly broke the security cordon is arrested and taken away. But thoughts now this evening are for those who've died. Flags flying half-mast. The police say there were no warnings, and subsequently there have been no claims of responsibility from any group. But they did say these were callous attacks on innocent members of the public, deliberately designed to kill. Guy Smith, BBC London News at Scotland Yard.
Well, as we've seen tonight, many people forced to walk home this evening in the rain. Peter's up on the roof with a weather check for us. Peter Cockroft, is it likely to get any easier tomorrow?
Well, I think we're likely to get a few showers to the east of London tomorrow, but in the city it's going to be dry. Not dry at the moment, there is a shower slipping southwards, but some drier weather behind me moving down from the north and out of the rain. It's not too cold this evening for walking home. 17, 18, 19 is 65 degrees Fahrenheit. There is a bit of a chilly breeze blowing. That'll pick up as the showers go through, so if you manage to borrow a brolly, you might have to hang on for it for a while. But I think as the evening goes on, the showers will tend to decay. We might keep a few going overnight tonight out to the east across Essex and Kent. And as I suggested before, that's where I think we'll find the showers tomorrow. The showers there pepping up through the day, so some sharp showers, some thundery showers for Essex and Kent. For the rest of us, I think it should be a dry day with a bit of sunshine breaking through in the afternoon, lifting temperatures to 20 or 21 Celsius, something like that. It's still looking as though the low pressure that's been giving us the unsettled weather this week will move out of the way, and we'll get high pressure for the weekend. So that means we're going to get some drier weather, some sunnier weather during Saturday and Sunday. Temperatures picking up over the weekend. I think we'll probably end up with temperatures getting up to 25 or 26 Celsius. So something a bit more like summer. And tomorrow morning, well, I think the showers staying away from London. Back to you, Emily.
Peter, thanks very much for that. Now, many of those who did make it in today may have found their colleagues stranded or their offices deserted, banks and shops shut early to give workers the chance to head home, as Mike Ramsden reports.
London closed early today. Shops and offices shut down to give people a fighting chance of getting home. Many of them won't be attempting the journey into London tomorrow.
There is an alert in our office at the moment to say stay in the office, but I've made the decision to go home.
No, I won't come to London tomorrow.
I think with the uncertainty of what's happened and whether the transport links will be up and running again, we've been told not to come into work tomorrow.
I don't want to get back on the tube.
In Canary Wharf, people were marooned when the buses and underground stopped. A queue of thousands stretched along the river. Ferries were packed, the only public transport available for much of the day. Elsewhere, people gathered near televisions, desperate for information.
I've actually just caught the TV now, but we didn't have a TV in the office, so we've just got no idea what's going on.
Away from the turmoil, London took on an eerie calm. Streets that were normally full of traffic were empty. This was Oxford Street this afternoon. Taxis the only thing on the roads. But the pavements were packed. All day, phone networks have been overloaded with calls. People checking family and friends are safe, then trying to find a way home.
I'm not sure what I'll do. I most probably have to see if I can find a hotel to spend the night or something.
Well, I'm hoping to get a mainline train out of Victoria once it actually opens again. If not, then I'll try walking to Brixton and try and pick up one from there.
But tomorrow morning there'll be another difficult journey back into London. Mike Ramsden, BBC London News.
Well, as you're hearing, the travel arrangements for London changing all the time, even whilst we're on air. Matt Barbette is at King's Cross, where a very limited service has just been introduced. Matt, give us the details.
Well, that's absolutely right, Emily. Yes, some platforms have reopened at King's Cross and some GNER and wagon trains are operating. Thameslink is running as well, but the King's Cross Thameslink station is closed. You have to go to places like Farringdon if you want to catch the Thameslink. A lot of people still approaching the cordon here at King's Cross, still wondering what's going on, whether they've been in a meeting all day or whatever, and being turned away, rightly so. If I look up Gray's Inn Road now, the traffic's still chocker, which has left people with a couple of options. Either they pick up their umbrella and they walk home, or like one man I spoke to who was trying to get back to Newcastle, decided to book into a hotel instead. Back to you.
Matt, thanks very much. That's all from us for now, but there will be news on the hour on BBC One tonight. And Jeremy Paxman will be here at 8 o'clock with a special programme on today's bomb attacks in London. I'll be back here at 10 o'clock on BBC One. Good night for now.